I didn't have any say.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're saying that everything that's been going on here, every conversation that I'm having, somebody listening. You've been listening to.
Yes. I just thought that you should know. It is very important that you don't tell Tommy any of this.
What's I supposed to do? He's gonna be here in 10 minutes. What?
Normal. I know that if anything happens, you're not
Hi, Zenka.
Hey, Mark, how's it going? Hey, Karina, good to see you. Right on. Hey, John.
Hi, Zenka.
Hey, what's up? Good to see you, beautiful.
You too.
Wow. Yay.
What a fun group already. This is so fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Indeed.
I'm going to start to, if you guys haven't done the survey, you can check that out. And I'm actually going to show you the results. So I'll actually share a screen real quick. We'll show these guys. So a lot of people have done astrology, I Ching, Myers-Briggs.
Oh, it looks like the drop off is Myers-Briggs. Because look, you've got 30 at astrology. Drastic drop
Yeah.
to 20 for I Ching and then 17.
Yeah. And then
Yeah, I Ching. Right? Interesting. Yep. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to be starting. It's called It's a Metaverse, and we're going to be starting it very shortly.
This is what you're sharing.
And
well, no, we'll share this during the session. But
excellent.
I'm getting used to being so low.
So low.
It's sort of the metaversal.
Oh, you should lower the
Is
desk.
that-
here.
Yeah, is that weird?
No, looks good.
So you can go higher if you want on that.
And we're discussing some
Environmental influence, we're from the stars.
and then
Where's the question?
Numbers. Do you think we can learn a lot about ourselves through birth and location information?
well, you can. Okay, I'll send you the link. No. Okay, all right. I'll send it to you. Just sure. On your email. Okay. Bye bye.
This is interesting for me.
Plus.
I need to go. That's yours.
Also. On the nose.
All right, welcome everyone to tonight. It's good to be here. I'm here tonight with Nolan, who is going to be talking about how to clarify your life and your vision through using some of the tools like Gene Keys. He's also going to share his experiences, his contact experiences. We're going to talk about Lyra. We're going to talk about angelics. He's also an incredible visionary about how we're going to be living together in the future, right? How can we find new spaces? And he's actually building a elven castle just outside of Flagstaff. So we're going to get into that a little bit first as well. So I want to start out by doing what we always do, which is a 60-second drop in to the field. So we can all do that. So let's go ahead and close our eyes and here we go, 60 seconds. Awesome, everybody. I'm going to ask everybody to mute if you're not talking here. Okay, so if it's your first time, welcome to Exo Metaverse. We're a citizen science platform for really figuring out what's coming up and what's new. We are excited to have everybody here tonight. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on some of the things coming up. So let me just share my screen here. So there's a big event coming up here in Sedona called the Angel and the Alien. And it's these two channelers. They're absolutely incredible. She's the alien, he's the angel. And they're going to be doing a lot of workshopping and it's going to be really, really powerful. I just signed up and I'd love to see you guys here in January. If you guys want to make your way to Sedona, you can also do it online. And next session, we're going to be with Eagle, who is an incredible guy. He lives here in Sedona. He's going to be talking about the tribe of Phoenix and the 7-mile medicine wheel, the physics of ascension. And he does an accitonal alignment that's really powerful. And he does it for people that come into town. And he knows a lot about Melchizedek. And he's also building heaven on earth. So he has this incredible spread here in Sedona that he invites people into, and it's really interesting to see his life and his happiness and what they're creating in his center. So, but let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, Nolan. It's great to have you tonight.
Indeed, thank you.
Great. So why don't you start with the absolute basics of what is human design and how did you get started in it? And so we can just get oriented, because I can see from the survey, most people have heard of astrology and things like that, but this is a lot more complicated. It seems even more complicated than Gene Keys. So give us the basics here.
Yeah, so okay, so essentially human design is a decently new system to humanity. In the early to mid 70s, a man named Ra Uru Hu discovered human design in a 8-day download.
Wow.
So I'm sure that was not the intention. And I've heard stories about how it was either painful or jarring, etc. But at the end of it, he had so much information that was not backed by science at the time and stuff like that, he didn't know what to do with it. So he sat on it for a decade or more. And by the mid 80s, there was some science that came out that gave him a little inspiration to move forward with it. And he decided to start teaching people what he had really learned in his download meditative experience. So at that point, he starts putting it together and, ways that people can look up their charts, etc. And he teaches like a small circle of people, kind of like, like an ancestor tree almost. You teach one person who teaches another person, and those people teaches that many people and tells that many people, yada yada. And by by the late 90s, hundreds of thousands of people knew about it, and it was growing exponentially. Not to mention nowadays, where you almost can't mention it without someone have heard of it or done something with it. So, so yeah, how I got into it was quite interesting. Not your typical story. I was at home one day watching, what is it called? Gaia TV, Open Minds with Regina Meredith, and there was Dirk Nellens. And Dirk Nellens was one of the first people that learned from Ra in the original circle.
Interesting.
And Dirk Nellens is a reflector, which is a very rare type, 1% or less, which means no defined centers, but we'll get into that more. And, he'd been doing it for decades by the time I saw him. This was 2019, 2018, perhaps. And, actually not too long ago. And, he's doing the interview, which I think was actually done here in Sedona, ironically, by Regina Meredith, oddly enough. And there's a little email address at the bottom right of the screen. And it was just one of those moments where you're inspired to do something and you don't really know why. You're just excited, and I was like, he left an email address. I'm going to use that. I'm going to email him and ask him if he'll teach me human design, because I've always been one of those people where I'm very fond of apprenticeships, or learning one-on-one, especially as a projector myself. So I email him and, yada, yada. And I go like, hey, I really love to learn human design. Do you teach human design, or will you teach me human design? And he goes, I normally don't teach people, let alone like one-on-ones. Like sometimes I do like a workshop or something, but I don't really do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I was still like, that was his way of saying no in a way. And for some reason, I don't usually do this, but for some reason I was like, okay, well, will you teach me? and I get this email back where he's just like, this quizzical response where he doesn't really know what to say. I get this email back and he's like, sure. I guess let me see your birth information. So he sends me I send him my birth information, and I get like an email back later that afternoon. He says, okay, I'll teach you, but it's got to be these days and these times for this much money. So and so it began. I had an apprenticeship with Dirk Nellens, which was really, really remarkable. Not to like, there is a college that teaches this, or they call themselves a college, and there's a website and you can go through it. But it's a classroom setting, or it's just learn by yourself information kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to learn that way. And I don't know, I took, I want to say it lasted a couple months, almost every day for like almost a full work day. And yeah. And it was pretty intensive, and it was a lot of information to jam into my head, and a lot of like going over the same thing, and just like, okay, wait, we talked about this, but not this way. And, so it was really awesome. I got to pick his brain about things, which I feel like, about a lot of things, which I feel like maybe you can't do in a classroom setting as much. So that was really, really valuable. And I'm really glad that happened that way, that I didn't go through the college, although I'm sure the college teaches a great program. I actually don't know. Haven't done it, but as far as that's concerned, that's where I started. And then I spent a few years doing free readings for people all across the board, just to be able to tune into them while also looking at their chart and seeing like how they're using certain things, and then of course I got some privy and information from Dirk as well about some interesting things that the college does not teach, which was really awesome.
Interesting.
I like those. Those are the cool ones. You know, people are starting to talk about them now, but even 3 years ago, it was like nobody had any idea. And then there's still one specific thing, but we'll talk about that when we start talking about it more.
Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to also, I see a couple people that I want to give a shout out to. I want to give a shout out to Greg Heller and Daniel Rection from Exo Metaverse. Greg has been working really hard this week on this incredible map for the Fire the Grid project, and Daniel, the co-founder of Exo Metaverse, has also been rolling up his sleeves quite a bit. We've got some exciting stuff, and also my amazing neighbor who studied with Osho is here. She stopped by to be live with us, so I wanted to welcome everyone. And so to give you a little context, you know, I came to Nolan. I said, I need you to read my charts with my son. I need you to look at them together and figure out, like, help me. You know, I'm a 7-year-old, like, you know, going, wow, you know. And it was really interesting what you told me. You said, wow, you know, one of the first things you said was, you said, wow, when you guys are together, your electromagnetics actually complete each other. Like the circuitry is actually completed in that way. And you also told me that I had to be really careful because he has a really strong emotional center and I'm completely undefined in my emotional center. And so I take on the emotions of everyone, right? So tell us a little bit more about, and we can look at some of the charts that we pulled for people. We pulled Teal Swan, Joe Dispenza, which you've been doing both of their work a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it really is interesting. Also, I just want to point out when you can look at two charts at the same time to see how is this working together. So what does that mean when you said, oh, like you guys complete each other? Like, and maybe we can pull some stuff up too, but just explain the basics and how that works with the electromagnetics.
Right. So basically that's a connection chart. And we want to be clear that it's a connection chart, and for anybody, whoever choose charts that were overlapping to see like whose channels are completing whose and defining whose centers. You know, regardless of the two people, that's a connection chart, not a compatibility chart, which is very important to realize because, you know, you're looking at, you know, like you're looking at the human body and then the soul, and you're putting them over each other. And that's why in human design, you see red lines and black lines, right? Okay. And so, but that's like birth. That's like, you got no like trauma, like it's like a clean slate almost is what you're looking at. So you can have people that seemingly might look incredibly compatible, but you know, compatibility is based on a lot of factors, you know, and where somebody's at emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically for some people. Who knows? So, but basically defining all 9 centers is really is a great thing because we've got I think here we go. So all 9 centers defined. So what you'll see in some charts that we're looking at here pretty soon is these centers will be defined through channels, and you'll see these numbers that are attached to each one of these colored centers, and those would be channels that are connecting them, or rather the numbers are gates. So to complete a channel, you have to have both gates defined and both centers opposing each other so that energy can move from one center to the other. And that's what makes a channel. So you'll never see a channel with just one defined center. That is not possible because energy has to move from one to the other to define both. So like for an example, if we go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the root center, and you'll see like right in the center top there's number 60, and right above that is the sacral, or the life force center, and you'll see 3. So in order to make a channel, just as an example, you would have to have 3, which is a gate, and 60, which is a gate. All those numbers are gates. Having both of those defined completes the channel of mutation, and that's just specifically what that channel is called, based upon how the energy is interpreted by people, generally speaking. So having 9 defined centers in 2 people that you're overlaying a connection chart with is usually a good thing. There are exceptions where people have naturally like 7 or 8 6, 7, 8, extremely rare, sometimes even 9 centers defined. And those people are generally need to be a little more careful about who they're connecting with, because they're going to make a lot of people feel really complete, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you were saying that. You were said, yeah, be careful who you connect with, because most of your gates are defined. Like this one has 4 that are empty.
Yeah, this is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Oh, wait. Okay, so I'm noticing a miscalculation here. That 11 gate is not defined in Dr. Joe Dispenza's chart. So that's okay.
What's
though.
the 11 gate?
So the ajna, if you look up here, so the very, very, very top triangle that says 64, 61, 63.
Yeah.
And then the one right below that, you'll see that red line that says 11. Dr. Joe does not have that defined. We just have the time wrong. So if you moved him a few hours forward or backward, that would change that. But
so that's kind of a big deal. He has all this open. So when there's no color, it means it's open. It means
so
he's receiving information from the world in that way, right?
It's more like he is so open that he has no choice but to take on definition there from other people who are in his auric field. And you could be in someone's auric field with talking to him on the phone. It's wherever your focus is going. You know? But in his, if we were to move him forward or backward, like whatever his exact time is, that 11 gate would move to his crown actually. And I think he has 63 defined, if I remember correctly. But he has a totally open ajna, which is that second triangle. And then the one below that, that's the square right there, that's the throat. And Dr. Joe has a totally open ajna and a totally open throat. And that's why you see him using his brain, which is, the properties of the ajna, the third eye. So he can think about things in any way that he needs to, because he doesn't have a defined way of thinking about anything whatsoever. So he can be, that's why he's bridging science and mysticism. He is not limited to thinking about things in any certain way, shape, or form. Yeah. And then we have
this
here,
is Osho.
This is Osho. So the cool thing about Osho's chart is he has a lot of definition for somebody who's a projector. So I guess we should talk about aura types now that we're going from one to the other. So there are, generally speaking, 4 basic aura types when we're talking about human design, and I'm going to put manifesting generators and generators in the same field, because Osho is a projector. Do you have the slide where it talks about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think here, let me just pull that up. Yeah, so we have
that's fine. We can
these
do that.
are the types, right?
Yeah, those are them. There they are. So generators, keep in mind that we're putting manifesting generators and generators in the same category here, because what makes the generator aura field is defined by the sacral, which means that regardless of if you're a manifesting generator or a generator, you are naturally, your aura is going to work the same way. So generators are a great place to start, because 70% or more of the people in the world are generators. So just as it says they're open, anyone can get in and envelop, like in an aura hug. So the way I like to explain this is their energy is expanding outward, and they want to be enveloped in the experience of life. Mm-hmm. And that can mean people or like anything. It's just being enveloped in the experience of life. They want to be enveloped, and they want to envelop other things. So they're here to, that's why most people are generators, because they're here to be living life and being enveloped in it.
Yeah.
And then the next most common is projector. Now, with that being said, about that being the next most common, there are 4 different types of projectors. So they're actually, if you break the projectors down into individual types, like the 4 different types of projectors, the projectors would be the second rarest, depending on their type. But we've got emotional projectors, splenic projectors, self projectors, and mental projectors, but their aura all works the same way. So the way that their aura works here, it says focused on the other, penetrating, absorbing, probing. So they're very A to B. You'll notice that projectors are not very good at talking to a crowd. They're very interested in what's happening in the other person, because the way that their aura works is they can penetrate into, like it says, they're penetrating into someone else's aura, and they can kind of see what's in their way. So the role of the projector here on Earth recently, because they've only been here since 1781
That's right. They're
or
new,
7
right?
1781, I think. But it's within 5 years of that, or 1778 or something like that. But yeah, so keep in mind these percentages are a little off. Generators definitely are 70% or more of the planet. And manifestors are actually kind of dying out. They're more like 7 or 8%, if not 7 by now. Reflectors, that may be accurate, but they've always been around 1%. And projectors actually hold more of like 17, 18% divided into 4, depending on the type of projector. So, but yeah, with that being said, the projector aura is meant to guide other people, because with their ability to penetrate into other people's auric field, they can kind of see what's in your way that you can't see, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there's also something in human design called an I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's basically just lingo for like how you live your life. You know, like the generators follow their gut because they have a defined life force center, and that defined life force center in the sacral expands outward for the enveloping experience. But for a projector, it's that is not defined. So they're here to be guides and advisors, essentially, because they can see in you what you cannot see in yourself. They have exceptional awareness, depending on the type, of course. And this is
wild. Completely undefined.
Yep, this is teal swan. Yeah, this is a reflector. Absolutely, completely undefined. You'll notice if you look at the the inner authority there, 4 down on the right, see where it says type strategy, not self-fame.
None.
No inner authority. There's no defined center. So there is nothing internal happening in the internal environment that's that says like yes, no, like, you know, your average generator,
Yeah.
70% of the planet or more, they can literally ask their gut,
Yeah.
like as another mind or brain, if you will,
Yeah.
for answers, for intuitive answers. And this person does not have that. This person has to like follow the cycles of the moon to make big decisions, which, you know, I've talked to some reflectors and they all agree that that is something that they do for like big decisions, but for small decisions, they still make decisions on just where they're at.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But yeah, and you'll notice with her chart, actually, if you're able to go back there, that there's let's see. So she has a totally open crown. You see that at the very top?
Completely, yeah.
And teal is a profound astral projector. Very, very exceptional. And you'll also notice that she's a spiritual teacher who teaches a lot about the emotional aspect, trauma healing and childhood trauma and stuff like that. And like, you know, self-love. And there's a lot more emotional teachings happening with Teal's work. And that's because she's a reflector, because she will just completely take on who other people are and then can reflect them back at them so that they can learn about themselves. But generally the aura of a reflector is kind of resisting. A lot of people who are reflectors are definitely aliens, and they are generally projectors, and reflectors are definitely not from here. And they especially reflectors, because they have this like shield kind of around them where they can kind of be here without needing to like fully be in it. And that's why they have no defined centers. And that's what gives them the ability to kind of like be here and walk around as a human being, but like, you know, like they're kind of like in this middle ground area energetically.
Well, what do you think? Do you think our DNA, then our humanness, gives us some of those definitions? Or what's your theory on how these templates work? Like, did you choose your template when you came in here, or how do you think that works exactly? And why would there be a different template for the aliens? Or I mean, obviously there's aliens that are other things, they're generators and whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways to look at this. The way that I think of it is like, so if you're an alien or you're like a celestial, you know, and you're coming here to help humanity with something, wouldn't you want to be a type that can either peer into others to help them, or be able to like reflect things back at them, you know, or be a manifester who can like move things out of the way to like then have generators initiate things. Like that's kind of I mean, there are definitely people who are, star seeds of sorts who are generators without a doubt, but it's the whole universe is a loving system, and you wouldn't be here to do something that you don't love at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And anything outside of that would be some sort of programming or trauma, etc. So there are, I would say, I have to be careful if I say that, but I would argue that most are projectors or reflectors. So
Mhm.
because of just what they're
What
here
are
to do.
you? What are you? What type are you?
I'm a projector,
You're a projector.
a splenic projector, because there are 4 different types, and they operate very differently. They have the same aura, and how like the aura works, and like what we're here to look into other people, and see. But as far as that, like what we're seeing when we look into somebody, and based upon like how they're in their own way, greatly depends on what type of projector you are. So like emotional projectors tend to focus more on emotions, and like what's happening emotionally. Like I have a friend of mine who's a medicine man, and he's an emotional projector, and like profound, absolutely. And that's how he does it. He's able to like put himself inside of you and figure out what's happening and feel like how the medicine's going to affect you, and then he picks the right one, and then unbelievable experience. So just an example of like a unique way a projector works, with the penetrating aura like that. So,
Yeah. So when you found out, and you were saying that even the Myers-Briggs was very helpful to you personally, like, so how have these tools been helpful to you in your life?
Myers-Briggs specifically?
Well, yeah, we're going to share you guys the links, and you probably got it in the emails, but like, if you haven't done your 16 personalities and your gene keys, and these are interesting tools, and what we'd like to hear from you guys, what you guys thought about your readings. Like, were they correct, or were they interesting? And this is really where citizen science can really come into play once we get going, is we can really see, like, how accurate is this, right, for people. If you go to 16 personalities, I don't have the link right here, but you can do that. But let's tell about your story about your.
Right. So Myers-Briggs is kind of like, I think it's a little funny for me. It's pretty common for splenic projectors specifically to be a little confused about like how they work, because like you look up your human design and it's like, you're a splenic projector, and you look at your inner authority and it's like your spleen, and you're like, what? Like when you first hear that, you're like, what? I do what now? And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. But emotional projector follows their emotions, super black and white.
Yeah.
Like a generator follows their gut. Like a reflector doesn't have a defined way of being at all. Or, I'm sorry, no defined ways of being at all. So lunar cycles, and manifestors can actually have a defined emotional center and follow their emotions as well. But generally, they too don't have much of a defined way of doing that. So they're here to just move people out of the way and do what they're here to do. So most, there are mental projectors and self-projected projectors. And mental projectors, are going to follow their thoughts and, the pressure to think. And I've met some that are pretty telepathic, actually. It's a little scary. And then self-projected projectors are pretty simple. They follow their inner voice, like their feelings, but not like emotional feelings. Like we're talking like heart-centered, like, even though that's not how human design would talk about it, it's like your inner voice that's telling you with love, like what you should do. Like that's kind of like the really kindergarten way of explaining that. But splenic projectors, they're like, oh, you should follow your spleen. And in human design, the spleen is like the house of intuition. They have it broken down to the spleen is intuition, like claircognizant intuition. So like that, just knowing, and there's no reason why you should know or how you got the information or whatsoever. It's just there, right? That's like claircognizance, and in human design, that's spleen. And then when we're talking about like the ajna clairvoyance, that's all up here. And then when we're talking about like clairaudience, that's the throat, actually, because the ears are connected to the throat. And when we're talking about clairsentience, which is like intuitively feeling, that's obviously your solar plexus, which is the emotional center in human design. So, you know, being any type with a, well, I guess only being a splenic projector with spleen authorities can be very confusing, because it's essentially saying follow your claircognizance. That's pretty much what it's saying. So they're like, yeah, you like walk out into the woods one day and then just be like, claircognizantly let your intuition tell you
I
where to
see
go.
an elven castle.
Yeah,
right here.
so it can be a little interesting, to be honest, and it took a while for me to learn that aspect, because it was not easy at first.
Well, so that's really interesting for everybody on the call to know that you're that inner authority, you know, which he was describing about the sentience, right? Because we're all going to be developing our other senses beyond the 5 senses, right? And they often say that once you develop one of them, the other ones will follow after that. So if you can focus on the ones that are coming to you, or that are natural, that'll help you basically move through the other ones. I know that you had, we're going to share a little bit more, and then we're going to go into breakout groups, but I know you had a pretty powerful experience at the Teal Swan workshop. Do you want to share about that?
Yes. Quick funny thing, I'm looking over here, and whoever Sandra is got INFP. I know a lot about INFP actually, so we'll mention that in a minute. So Teal Swan's curveball retreat, and it's called the curveball retreat because there's no direct way of doing it. You show up and
you get
whatever you need is what you get, you know, kind of, and it's a whole week long. And of course, you know, anything that's teal related is going to revolve around childhood trauma, most likely, or something like that, of that nature. So being there for a week was just like being in a week of nonstop trauma release, which was great. Actually, I loved it. I thought it was the best thing ever. Some people thought it was really daunting. Other people wanted to leave and were uncomfortable.
You were saying that trauma release opened up space in your body for all this other major powers that are coming in for you. So just know, you guys, that it's worth it. It's worth it, right?
Yes. So when I was at Teal Swan's curveball retreat, this was August 2020, and long story short, I actually had everyone got at least like one session that was pretty long, and mine was like 3 days before the end, I want to say, and it was really helpful, and you know, got a lot of stuff out of the way, and it kind of knocked a lot of things free and different perspectives, and got some, you know, inner parts of me moving and flowing better, fluidly, whatever the word is. And the next day, okay, I show up, and one of the other men in the group, because we had broken into groups of like men only, just for this specific, that's not always a thing, but for this one, it was what we did. And this man, who's actually a friend of mine now, he was diagnosed with like bipolar disorder. And when they were doing like looking into those splits in his consciousness, because that's what happens when you're traumatized, something happens that you feel that you don't have we'll call it space for now, like the space or the right atmosphere to be dealing with what's happening. So you split your consciousness, and then basically you make a new split that can deal with what's happening here, and this gets suppressed, and that's trauma, like on an energetic level. So they were uncovering a lot of stuff with him, and there was this woman who was channeling the part of him that was suppressed, and she was like screaming in terror, like I like worse than any sort of like horror film type loud screaming. And it was just, and something in me was like, this is familiar, this pain, you know. And yet the previous day I had, you know, got a lot of let's just say alignment in my inner environment from doing that with my own splits and such. And it was almost as if like the screaming of this person had sent me on this, like I started to shake a little bit, and then all of a sudden one of the men in the group came over and just like kind of like held me for a second, you know, and he's like, whatever you need to do, like just do it, because I was sitting there like this. I was like hyperventilating, you know, just from somebody else screaming. And I just like, I screamed so loud, and it's the perfect place to do it, you know, where everyone's there for the healing. And man, yeah, I mean, time was a little different there, and Teal's really honed in. So she's working on, you know, this man, and you know, the rest of the men's group are kind of just holding space for me while she's trying to finish that, because that he's still having his thing, and that you know, girl who's channeling that is still screaming, and then I'm screaming, and then she comes over, and I want to say it was like an hour later, because and at that point I was like plateaued on the couch, like staring up at the ceiling. Like, ever been so exhausted that you're just like staring at the ceiling and you're like, man, it's okay, I could die right here. This is it. And she comes over and, you know, without going into all the details, very serenely walks me through a soul braid, which is basically a walk-in. The only difference is that it's the exact same thing, except for the current soul remains, and then the being that's coming in, which is generally extraterrestrial, in this case gets braided with the current soul that is in the human vessel. And so I was walked through a soul braid for that, and that was a year and a quarter ago. So pretty recent, actually, considering time and all that doesn't exist.
Wow. So how do you imagine that happening? Was it that this other soul was like, hey, I want to be in there, and she was able to facilitate? Or was it like, why did that happen then and there? And what was the effect in your life?
So that was a soul contract, actually. And that part of me that came in was actually a part of my higher self. It was a different aspect of me that was living a we'll call it extraterrestrial for now life. That was still me, like on a higher perspective. So it was my higher, and I'm not like, I know we're all the same in source level, but I'm talking like higher self, like that being was actually this way. We share the same higher self is what I'm communicating here. So when that happened, the best way that I can explain that is it was like releasing. If you're a glass, like this glass, okay, and let's pretend like everything that was up here, like above the water, was just this like soot, you know, and we'll call that trauma. And it was like I had poured out a substantial amount of soot out of my glass, out of my vessel. And it was as if my higher self came in with this like picture, and it was, I mean, I get the same visual every time. It's like this golden source light that you like would visualize if you ever tried to like, as a human, visualize what source would look like. This like golden light kind of thing, and just poured right into my glass until it was as full as it could be. And then, you know, with that happening, there was a part of me that was like, the soul contract, which means that it was probably going to happen because it was agreed upon before I came here, was like, if you get to this point and you go through this and you release that, then, you know, when you fill in with your higher self, then I'll come in as well. We'll braid and we'll create one new soul, essentially, you know. So yeah, so very, very interesting experience. The most blissful experience I've ever had in my life by a long shot. So, like, just the amount, like, there's nothing like, and this is just why I'm so gung-ho about people doing trauma healing work, you know, there's nothing like pouring out pain and just feeling like your higher self just takes this golden like light and just pours it into you, and you're just like, it is unbelievable. There's nothing like it.
Wow.
So,
and your life really changed because of it. Like, now you're building this village, right? I mean, it was like you saw a big shift, right? Like right away, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that it taught me was, it sounds so archaic, would that be the right word? Like, where something's like so basic that it's like evasive almost.
Which
like,
part is basic? What do you mean exactly?
The number one thing I learned was that I am love, and that everybody is love, and that I didn't really have to try to do anything. I just needed to be love and do what I love, and that the control was already built into the flow of life. I didn't really have to control it anymore. And that was like the real beginning, because like when that happened and you can feel that much like love source coming into you at once, that's a lot of energy. And it's like my perspective changed instantly. Like it was no longer, all the years of my life leading up to that, it was, I have to try really hard to do this. And, I was like super bulldozer, like even if I didn't want to do it, I'd do it, just do it like almost like self-harm, to be honest. So, having that perspective of being love just completely 180'd me, 100%. So.
Wow, interesting. So we're going to go into breakout groups right now. If you want to stay on, Nolan has a really strong recall of his past lives, and he's going to talk about angelic lives and Lyran lives and the universe and all sorts of different things. But this is recorded, so you guys can always get it later. This is your chance to really connect with others in the community, share your stories. So tonight we can talk about, what's the trauma you want to release, or what trauma have you released, or you could talk about your chart and your journey with discovering that and unraveling that. And then always you can talk about your contact experiences. So if you don't want to go into a great breakout groups, just ignore the thing on the screen. You're just going to ignore it and you're going to stay in the main group. We're going to stay in the breakout groups for 20 minutes, and we're going to everybody designate a timekeeper. That timekeeper will divide the time about 4 or 5 minutes per person. And when it's your time, you get to talk. You have the whole time. No one should interrupt you. If you want feedback or other things, you can request it. I think that's it. So one more thing, I'm going to be moving people around into the group. So the first moments while this happens, will be a little bit crazy. So just wait till things settle down and then you guys can start. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start these. And Nolan, why don't you talk about, so we have this series about, our first contact experience or our best contact experience. So I want you to talk about, it could be either one of those. And let me just get this stuff started. And I'm going to kind of make the camera towards you because this is sort of a series that we have. So.
Okay.
If you want to scoot forward.
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right.
We're just sharing. All right.
Okay.
So what is it?
So, okay, so
Contact experience?
yeah, so contact with the other realms. It could be angelics, it could be your experience with your past life where you just really had a contact experience outside of yourself that was profound. It could be with ET, it could be
So let's break this down a little bit because
Okay.
there's actually a lot. I'm one of those people where I always ask like the universe, I was like, well, I wonder what past lives I had. And I get all these interdimensional other species answers, but I never get anything human. It's very strange. But which I have had human past lives, in readings. So it's just for some reason, the universe is like, oh, you'll enjoy this. Look at that. But let's see. So the most connected one I would say is going to be the celestial one. I just say celestial because I feel like the word angelic is a little more is a little too defined. There are celestial beings who aren't I guess you could say they're angelic, but like elven beings are technically very angelic, but you wouldn't consider them to be, and it's not what you think when you think angelic. So I like to use the word celestial when I'm talking about that, so we can kind of take a whole group, because we've got like archangels, angels, celestials, aeons. We've got like elven beings. It's like there's so many. All the ELs, of course. And then I have memories of. Let's see. I don't know why I pronounced it Lyran, but everyone else says Lyran. So Lyran past lives. I have memories of dragon past lives, and then one past life as a human. So
can you talk about the Lyran one?
The Lyran
The
one.
Lyran one. I see what
Lyran just sounds better, but in my opinion. But sure. So this would be a great opportunity for questions because I tend to be more activated when someone's asking me a question. It's weird because like I will try to ask, but it's not like exactly, let's say, like my passion to tune into that kind of stuff. But once I like telling other people about it. So if someone else has a unique question, yeah, Angelic comes in many forms. So if anyone has a question then about what it was like, then maybe we can start there, because we're, you know, I can't describe an entire civilization in 3 minutes.
Okay, so okay.
So, like,
So tell us what are the characteristics in that civilization that you wish we would adopt here?
that you don't have to fight. So, okay, so I'm going to say it the way that I say it, just for my own.
Yeah, definitely.
Lyrans aren't actually from our universe. They're one of the only starseed people that are not from this universe. They came from a completely different universe experience that they had, we'll say, finished or completed on their own. And they decided to come here to help. And when they came here, they decided to use lions as like their main species to evolve through, you know, to like move really fast, because they knew what was going to happen and they knew what the universe needed, or this universe needed. So that's what they chose. But to be honest, there are multiple orders in Lyra. There are, is it 3 or 4? There is a bird folk like Lyra order. There's obviously the lion Lyran order, and there's a mer people, like aquatic water people one. There are some other like smaller ones, but for the most part, those are like your main 3. And I think that's like the gold, emerald, and amethyst orders, if I'm remembering correctly. You can actually, this stuff is online, I think nowadays. But so like when you say, like, a lot of people think only lions when you think Lyran, but to be honest, there were quite a few like avian Lyrans that were very air elemental based. You know, like they didn't just choose lions, like they chose a different selection of species so that they could, because they knew just picking one would have, you know, like sure, you'd have a lot of, it's like picking one of anything, you know, like if you just choose like the lion, like there are downsides to, like, you know, there are shadow aspects, there are things that are difficult for those types of beings to deal with. So that what they did in order to accelerate as fast as possible is they picked multiple so that they could help each other and they could bridge all at once and go up really, really fast. So that was the goal. And the reason why I say that the number one thing that I think we should learn from Lyrics is you don't have to fight, because fighting actually just increases fighting even more. Because when the Dracos went to go wage war on them in Lyra, they just left. Because they knew, like, they're here to stop that cycle, so they're not going to take part in that cycle. And that was profound to me, you know. And you tell a lot of people who are there's a lot of Lyrans that are not, like, there's like new Lyrans, you know, because like when the original ones came here to start let's say ascending, for lack of a better term here, those ones had a lot of knowledge and wisdom that they brought from the old universe, but some of the newer ones that were born didn't have the same lessons, let's say, like in their memory fragments, for lack of a better term. So for them, they adopt a lot of the lion traits, you know, or like really hard-headed and going to go forward and be the leader, but they'll fight anything. So it's like there's a interesting split that happened with, you know, some of the old Lyrans that came here that were like, no, we don't need to fight. Let the Dracos are going to come to our constellation or planet, and they're going to try and start a war with us, but we're just going to be like, no, you guys, you can have the planet, we'll leave. So, which is, you know, energetically, if you're looking at the law of attraction, you know, and how the universe works, that is the best thing you can do. You know, if you're here to really heal and ascend all beings, because at the end of the day, you know, we can get really into different types of beings, but the goal here is like to be as much love from the internal environment externally, so that we can all become more loving, you know. So they knew that like waging war with the Dracos, it's gonna be a joke. Like,
yeah,
that's not what we're here to do.
So I invite questions if you guys want to type them into the chat as well. So Fall is asking, like, how did you access your past lives? And at what point in your journey did those memories come back to you? So it sounds like you've probably accessed more past lives than anyone I've ever met. So what?
Wow.
Yeah, like what is your methodology and yeah.
My method is that it's still happening. It wasn't just like one time where it all came in at once and then I never got it again.
It's meditation
It's
though?
a constant flow.
Are you in meditation? Are you in hypnosis? Like what
No.
it's
Honestly, like if you are
cognizance, maybe.
pretty much, it's you know, we'll get biblical just for a moment here, but ask and you shall receive is not a joke. Like, you know, if it's actually something that you want to know from like a loving place, you know, internally, you can ask and it will arrive like substantially fast. The issue is that, you know, we're programmed to think that we need and want certain things that we don't, and then we ask for those things, and then we're all automatically in resistance vibrationally to receiving them because it's not what we really want. We just think we do because that's how we're raised, etc. So, I mean, all of this, you know, past life knowledge that I've had, you know, being like a dragon, an elephant, and an angel, and like an Illyrian and a human, it's like all I did was ask, to be honest. Like, yeah, like the Lyran one really came in hard, of course, because that was you know, during a huge trauma release. But I learned probably more about my past life as a Lyran, just being curious about it and asking questions and just being open in day-to-day life. Like, that's it, you know, like, of course I got like a lot of information right then and there, but you know, like it doesn't have to stop there. You know, like, so I would say if anybody wants to learn about past lives, like, first of all, make sure that's actually what you want to know and not just because like it would be cool to know. Like, you know, let's make sure that it's something that you're enjoying from your heart outward. And if that's true, then start asking and you'll get answers. It's not, you know, and then if you can't tell the difference between like what you're imagining or what you're receiving visually, then, you know, start doing some meditations where you're getting to a thoughtless place. You know, actually, ironically, Dr. Joe meditations are really good for that. So that's a great place to start.
So what have been your most powerful past lives and have they influenced the Elven? I want you to talk a little bit about the Elven project and how that shows up for you and what you envision there. I mean, did that come from an Elven past life where you're like, wow, I want to remake this here? Or
yes.
Wow, so you're going to remake something you lived in another life. Whoa.
I mean, it has to be done in a human way because we are human and that's what we are right now. And you know, the number one reason that ETs don't show up on the White House door is because like that type of information wouldn't be received very well, you know. So it's important that it's received from humans, and that's why starseeds come and become humans and wake up as a human to then spread the information, you know, because it doesn't really matter that like if you're human or not. What matters is like the message you're bringing in, you know. So yeah, it is inspired as a past life of being Elven. I was an Elven king in a past life, so, which was very interesting. I always thought that, you know, even when I was into past lives and, you know, aliens and esoterics and star seeds, you know, I always had a deep love for like elvish stuff, but I always thought it was fantasy until I don't know, I started meeting people who had very interesting features and like passions in life, and then it kind of opened me up a little bit, and I was like, okay, maybe it's just my programming that is telling me that that's not a real thing. You know, it had to come from somewhere. And then I started looking into it and I was like, wow, you know, like the Elven language is actually really sophisticated for somebody who just wrote a book about fantasy. And then you start looking back and back and back and you realize that like, it's a real thing. And, you know, and then I started asking questions like I did with the Lyran thing and the dragon thing and the angel thing. And then I started getting answers and I started getting flashbacks. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, no wonder I loved it so much. You are what you love at the end of the day, you know? So, you know, any one species that you love, and you're probably connected to it somehow in some way. So,
What it can tell us, I don't know that much about Elvins. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
I mean, pretty much all the stuff that you would expect, you know, very nature-based beings who prioritize peace over war. Actually very similar to Lyrans on an odd level. And is there a link for this Elvis project? Elven project. There is not yet. Well, unless you have something. So this is a relatively new project, actually.
You just paid off the land.
Yeah, I
and
just
it's, like,
finished
so
paying off the
exciting.
land, so I just started opening up to like what I was gonna do on it. So there will be very soon. Thank you, Robert, for asking, because I do need to formulate that.
I do want to share though, guys. We do have Nolan's contact information here. So if you want to take a screenshot or write it down, it's Ark and then his last name. And yeah.
Yeah, any questions, human design, past life, trauma healing? I mean, anything that's going to help anybody, you know, embrace love from the inside out. I'm a full supporter of it. You can ask me anything anytime.
Yeah, do we have any questions, guys? We can let you, if you want to raise your hand, you can do the reactions on the corner right or type it in. Susan, do you just want to, let me just have you
I actually love
on.
that question.
So go ahead. Yeah, if you guys want to raise your hand in the reactions, then I'll just put you on. Okay, great. Go.
Hello there.
Hi, I'm just curious about how these, what you feel is the purpose for this human life experience, how you've come from those other experiences, and what you think the purpose for this human life experience is now for you and for everyone, especially during this apocalyptic appearing time.
Right. I think the first thing that I want to say is, you know, it does appear apocalyptic, but we wouldn't be here if it were doomed to fail. So deep breath. It's gonna be all right. This answer to the first part. So for me personally, because I heard you ask me and then also other people, right? Like for others. So for me personally, I tend to, or my higher self, I should say, tends to keep to a very similar theme. I tend to go places and build a kingdom, or a place where people can go and be home, you know, in the light and love, and they can discover themselves from their hearts from the inside out. And, you know, that's how I change the world. But there's a lot of people who do it very, very differently, you know, but I tend to, that's what I tend to do. So, and I mean, there's been other places where I haven't done that. Like Dragon Past Life, I was not a dragon king. I was just a average, but that's actually a pretty common step down. If you have or know anybody who is of celestial origin or like angelic, becoming a dragon is actually a very common step down. Almost anybody you meet who claims to be of angelic past life, or like, let's say their higher self is like angelic, then generally a dragon archetype is incredibly strong, but it's also very primal. So it's a great step in the right direction towards becoming human, or living in a denser reality, if that makes sense. You know, because we have really negative shadow aspects of dragons, and those are true, but there are also dragons that don't do that. So, you know.
So when you had these experiences, did you perceive, like, of the memories, were they perceived through a dream, a vision, or were you actually drawn into that other realm?
Do you mean like physically, or when you, what do you?
Physically or spiritually or
Right. Yeah.
consciously?
I've never physically been drawn into well, I'm not gonna talk about that, but usually not physically, you know, like I came here to be human, so that's what I'm doing. And if I have any questions, I'll ask them. And generally speaking, it's usually during a meditation, but it can happen when I'm just walking down the street or pulling up to work. Like it's pretty interesting how it comes in sometimes. Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I see it, sometimes I just know it, like claircognizance, you know, but kind of how you were saying, you know, like I followed my claircognizance first because that was my primary way of receiving intuition. And as I did that, I ended up being much more clairvoyant and clairaudient in those other two realms. And that was very helpful because claircognizance is very confusing at times. And when you're first starting out, because you don't know the difference between like, if you just made something up just then and there, or if it's just like something you received. But most of the time, lately, at least when I'm going to say lately is like the last year or two, it's been clairvoyant, which is the easiest way for the human brain to kind of process something. If you know the difference between like what you're visualizing and what you're receiving, it's like you see something like that, and if you know it's coming in, like there's almost no way the ego can argue that. So that's I ask for it visually now, even though that wasn't naturally how I started. It usually comes in as visions, to be honest. Yeah, that's how it comes in.
I can't believe you're saying that you were a king in the past life, because when we were doing the pre-meeting for this interview, we're looking up your gene keys, and it was all about you being this humble leader that would, you know, take out the trash. Essentially what it was saying is like you weren't above anything else, but that you were also this like very wise and regal leader. Like so that's interesting, right?
Well, that's how they usually go. Usually go somewhere, and there are people who are already in power who are wanting to be in control, you know, and manipulate systems and what they're doing. And it's usually a fight, to be honest. Or I shouldn't say a fight. It's a struggle at first to get up there, if that makes sense. You know, actually, this life has been the easiest one yet in that regard, because you know we live in a time where there are not really kings anymore. So it's actually more accepted, oddly enough, with that, because nobody's here to fight it. They're just like, you know. But generally speaking, it's you know, you come into an experience where there's already people in power like that, and they do not take lightly to the whole concept of like, oh, you're a king, you're actually the servant, and your people are, you know, you're a servant for your people. That's what you are, you know. Like, do you love your people? You know, like, what are you, like, why are you the king? Like, what are you doing? So it's, you know, and that's a foreign concept to a lot of people in power, especially power like that, where one person is absolute law, you know. So but yeah, that's been a common theme. It was the same in Lyra. That's the dragon one's the only one I could think of where that wasn't the case, actually. So
yeah, that's interesting, as we're like rethinking leadership in the modern age. It's like, well, we don't even really want kings, because we want the people to lead themselves. But how interesting that
ready to meet, Lila?
is someone that is a servant, right?
Well,
so it's like the opposite.
Are you? Because I've got a live stream going on.
I think we just have someone that we need to mute. Welcome, Hunter. I see Hunter here. He's also tirelessly paving the way of this exo revolution. Yeah, Hunter. Okay, great. Yeah, so do you want to talk about any other visions about how your perfect installation would be in Flagstaff? Like, you talked about having, you know, different enclaves that people would get, you know, they would have their spaces in, and having it be really geometric and beautiful, and how they would, like you said, feel really safe when they're in there to.
Yeah. So my favorite way to explain this, because somebody asked me this question one day, and I think they expected me to doubt myself, but it actually made me sharpen. And I'm glad they asked me, because now I'm going to share it with you. Someone said, said, well, what are you going to build? Like an eco village or like, like domes or something? Or like, what is it going to look like? And I was like, no, it's going to be a castle. And they look at me like, what? And they're like, a castle. And they're like, yeah, like an actual castle. What are you going to build it out of? I'm like, stone. And they're just like, they just give me this weird look like, and they're like, so like an actual castle. And I was like, yes, like an actual archetypical like castle, like a kingdom, and they're just like, well, like, don't you think, the whole thing with, I don't do politics much. What was the guy's name that make fun of his hair? Trump.
Oh yeah.
The whole thing with the walls, so they're all like, well, why walls? Like, don't you think that it like, from the law of attraction perspective, if you're building walls for protection, that you're going to like be inviting dangers, or essentially are people to attack. And I was like, if that was the purpose of the walls, maybe, but you don't walk into your house and sit down with the family that you love dearly and say, wow, I sure wish these walls weren't here. Like, no, like those, walls don't have one purpose. Like it's a loving container where people are home. And that's important, and that's why I wanted the archetypical castle, because, you're like, you're welcome. There's plenty of land out there. You can walk outside, do whatever you need to do. You don't have, nobody's locked into anything. It's not a prison. It's a home. The walls are there to be a loving container. And that's really, really important to me, and I want to build the homes for people. I want them to be nice. I want them to be, I want people to want to be there, and I want people to have pride in where they're living, but like the right kind of pride, like a loving pride, like they're like, wow, I love being here because I'm appreciated. And, like what I love matters, and that is what matters. And that's, if we all did what we loved, like the world would be a very different place at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's why I think it piqued my interest so much when you're like, I'm not just building an eco village, I'm building an elven castle. Like that, that has the energetics to pull us out of, to give that extra energy, to give that extra effort, to make something that's like so fun. It's like, are you really getting away with that? Like, that's great, So it's like, I think you're going to get a lot of energy behind that. And I'm glad that it's going to be close by so we can check it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and close the breakout rooms. Now, this is a chance for all you guys to come forward tonight to talk about an experience that you've had with contacts on the other side. And we'd love to hear your stories. If not, we can also ask people questions. And then cool. So John West is saying he created a multi-dimensional Unity rock garden. That's so cool. John, do you want to come up and talk about that?
Sure, yes, I'm right here.
Okay, I'm going to put you on here. Awesome.
Nolan and Zenka, I just want to tell you thank you so much. And when you mentioned you have this vision and driven, I was downloaded in November of 18 to build a berm along when I carried in tons of rocks, but some were donated, and a lot of people bring rocks to the garden and come and meditate. And a young lady psychic who was walking 3/4 mile away was drawn to it and told me how the energies just drew her. But it is when you're driven like that, I feel like I'm one with the rocks. People say, well, how do you do this? How do you arrange these, stack them, make designs? I said, the rocks talk. The rocks have talked to me from day one. And it's like they put themselves in harmony, like it's like a symphony of patterns and designs. I just posted I put up the link on YouTube, but Kenji Kamara just said, John, he saw it recently, but it's those things that you share that make me ask what my other connections were. Why is this so important to me? How do I feel so connected and get lost in another world and see beings, and I can feel energy in there. I had someone dematerialized 10 feet from me, and I watched him walk the half block toward me. And I have had a UFO experience out there at night. And it's been those things, and what you're saying, I lived in Flagstaff. I just am anxious to hear what you're doing with that. It's just so powerful. It's
Yeah.
the energy, and Zenka, for bringing us all together always. That's service. It's service. Thank you.
Indeed.
Awesome. I'm so glad you guys. Yeah. So does anybody, thank you so much for sharing that. That's so cool. And I think you're right that like passion is going to drive us. And I love that you just hit upon the same thing of asking you shall receive, because that's like one of the most central messages that you're leaving with us tonight, is that if it truly comes from your heart, and you will get it, and whether it's clairaudience or clairvoyance or a castle, right? It will show you how to do it. It will show you how to build it.
Yeah, trust me. The first time the universe was like, hey, you're the king, you need to build a castle in America. I was like, what? I had to hear that one a few times. So, and I get it. So yeah, follow what you love. It definitely always pans out, And if you do remember where you're from, or you're having memories, try to tune into what it is that you love about that and bring that here. It's no coincidence that you're remembering. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody else want to share a story about a past life or a contact experience that they've had? Or any experience you had? Did anyone do their human design chart? Did anyone pull that up and have some questions for Nolan? Knows it was trained by the best in the world.
Okay, now maybe top 10.
Top 10 people in the world.
Let's be modest
on this topic. So
Dirk's
yeah,
pretty good, but...
Did anyone Hunter, do you want to share anything about elves?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, so I tuned in late, but Robert notified me that you guys were talking about elves, so I had to hop on.
Yeah.
What's your connection to elves, Hunter?
So I've role played as elves my whole life, and I never put too much thought into it until I was listening to some Abraham Hicks and Joe Dispenza, and their whole thing is like to be coherent with yourself. And so I ended up one day last year, I was writing out like my ideal elven lifestyle in like my journal, and I wrote about all these things that seemed like very elf-like things to do and ways to live. And I then proceeded to put together musical playlists that reminded me of elven homes and that sort of thing.
Wow.
Rivendell, for instance, that kind of music. And I listened to this music every night. And for months, I would do that meditatively, and I would get visions in my mind. And it wasn't until later when I watched Adam Apollo, and he has a talk about different backgrounds.
I've talked to Adam Apollo. Please continue.
I'm not surprised. And he talked about his past life as a half-elf and the connection with Sirius, the star system. And what he described and his memories that came to him, which apparently he's relived, were uncannily exactly like my own. And so things like living up in these huge trees, and like there's so much sunlight, and that's why these trees are so big, because it's a binary star system and things like that. And
there's multiple stars actually in the solar system. Yeah.
And so this proved to me that I wasn't just imagining things. I thought I'd been imagining things to the music, but it was like he knew exactly what I wanted to imagine. So obviously it wasn't just imagination. It was coming from somewhere. It was channeling. It was recovering past life memories or whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
So since then, I've been really fascinated to hear anytime anyone else has elven backgrounds to share about.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I met somebody recently who has discovered the secret of lambus bread,
I've cooked
like
lumps.
on Earth, and is using grain that's like 13,000 years old from ancient Mesopotamia, which, by the way, is older than Atlantis. By the way, like Atlantis is usually about aged at 10,000, but so that's really awesome, and he's going to plant that there in the
Cool.
castle. But yeah, honestly, what I also want to say is, if you remember anything that doesn't fit with anybody else, that's okay too. You know, like I have memories of
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
like, what is it, the first I don't like the new ones as much, but the newer Hobbit films, the very first one where they get locked away by Legolas and Thranduil.
Yeah.
The inside of that kingdom is eerie. That is like almost exactly what I remember. Like
The one in Mirkwood, like in the second one, I believe that is.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, the inside of that is eerily accurate. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow.
Interesting.
The light is kind of gold, like that gold tint that I was used to. So yeah, I mean, there's other factors too. Like I also remember like some white ethereal lights that were like natural, that were just like present for some reason. You know, my human doesn't understand why, but
Wow. You talk about the lighting. I mean, I have had so many synchronicities that have come full circle for me, but one just as an example, like I put together all this music that sounded Elven to me, just generally sounded Elven, right?
Yeah.
And one of them was this group called Slender Bodies. They have an album called Komorebi. And that's the Japanese word for light streaming through the trees. And in Adam Apollo's talk, he was talking about how you may have an affinity for the light coming through the trees. And so I was looking up the word komorebi, and then I realized it was already the name of an album, the music I was listening to. So it's so cool how so many things come full circle like that.
Yeah, the lighting is a big thing I've noticed with people who have had elven past lives.
So I've been channeling with a guy that passed over, and he told me that on at least where he is, that it never gets dark. It's just always light. There's not night there.
Yeah.
Is that in serious?
And no, he's just in the active. I don't know where he is. You named your kingdom. What is you? We want to explain the name to people?
Tara Selenia, which is Quenya Elvish for the castle of the stars, or connected to the stars. Elenia can mean connected to or of. So Tara Selenia.
So in the time that we have, why don't you talk a little bit about what you see? You know, you talked about a lot of people, star seeds incarnating right now and things like that. Talk about how you see that, and like, are they all waking up? Are they already woken up? Like, what's your sense of is there an unusual number of people that came, right? You know, I mean, that's what they say right now. What's your sense of how things are going, and how
this is always a strange conversation for me, because there is a lot of people who are manifesting as humans that are star seeds, but they are from places that are actually relatively nearby when you look at like the size of like the universe and how many galaxies there are. Like you don't see a lot of I mean, they're coming more and more apparent, but I mean, there are other galaxies that like we have no idea about, that have beings that like, you see what I mean? Like, so, and I've met some of them, you know, but like generally speaking, like, you know, a lot of Orions and Pleiadians and Arcturians are like, they're like right next door, like relatively speaking, when you think about how vast the universe is. So, you know, I haven't, I'm sure there's a part of me that's lived all of those things. I'm sure everybody has, but you know, I'm not as familiar with those. So it's hard for me to say, because I don't have let's say an affinity, you know, to be able to tell like what somebody would be a little more in the ET realm, because my experiences have been very like angelic, elven.
Yeah, talk about the angelics.
So, but to round up the question, yeah, there are a substantial amount people coming here to be human that are, have not been human before, or maybe they have been human before, but they have a lot of they're streamlining a lot of energy from past lives that they're bringing here. So it's rare actually to find somebody who's never been human who's a starseed. That would be, I would say that's a reflector. Not all reflectors, but that'd be a subtle giveaway. But yeah, there's a good, I would say like right now we're probably at like 20% of the population are starseeds, which is a lot.
30, yeah, 20
So
or 30, yeah, wow.
that is a lot when you consider how many people are here. So the real question I feel like, or the real answer to that question I feel like that is important is like, what is it that you're bringing here? If you are one, or if you meet one and you're not, like there's something that they're bringing in that is love based, or else they wouldn't be here. There's something that they're bringing in that's coming from the heart, that is a passion for them that they want to get across the board. So that's the real question, I think.
Talk about your angelic heritage and your connection in that way.
Oh boy, you guys ready
That's
for this is the real rabbit hole
connection you have, right?
So the best way that I can explain this, is anybody here familiar with like the Gnostic story of the aeons and the pleroma? I know everybody's muted, but so don't need to answer that. For those who are, that has been the most intuitively accurate story I've ever read about the creation of the universe. Because when I first started my spiritual path, for some reason, the only thing I could tune into was like my angelic past, and past being relative, of course. And we are interested in your opinion. Let me wrap up my story.
I don't see you. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people,
but we don't see your hand up.
Yeah.
And hands are supposed to go to the left, I think. They're supposed to show up on the top. Oh, there we go. Now we see it.
Oh,
now we see it.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so essentially, the story goes, there's like the pleroma is right outside of source. Okay. And source becomes self-aware. And then there's the consciousness of thought, because the first thing that happens is there's a thought, and then a split happens. And I guess according to trauma healing, that would be traumatic, but that's just a joke. Sorry. And then thoughts are being thought about in different ways, and then you start to get all these different aeons. And then the story goes that Sophia, the aeon of wisdom, was dreaming something in the pleroma, which is just like this magnificently heavenly place right outside source, and that she was dreaming up something, and that she decided to go into the dream, and then she fell, and then the chaos happens, and then she's in this like black void essentially, and she starts creating things, but she's missing like the masculine counterpart, so there's like a lot of creation happening, but there's not a living container that she needs. So then like, this is of course my interpretation, but what I've intuitively picked up on is that Yahweh in the Bible was her attempt to create her own counterpart. And that's why you read about Yahweh in the Bible being this like very like destructive force. And it's like, and he's like smiting things, and like, because like an aeon created from another aeon, like outside of the pleroma, while, in a desperate attempt for like a counterpart, and then the story goes is like, we're all here to try and reascend that, back up into the pleroma, for lack of a better term. So my first, I had memories from what I will call the pleroma, and then I have memories of being angelic in heaven, so to say. And the angelic, and the reason why I'm explaining the stories, because I want to make it clear that when I say heaven, we're talking about very high dimensional place that was created by Yahweh. And that's why I told that story of understanding. But yes, I have memories of being Azrael. So I don't tell too many people that. So that's because it tends to really be an interesting conversation that upsets some people. But I think everyone here is interested. So, yeah, very interesting place. You know, I'm pretty sure that the way that I see it is just being interpreted, you know, through my human, but yeah, it's like a place where it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's without fear, but it's as much as you could get without, you know, going straight to what I would call the pleroma, right outside source. So that was a very interesting experience. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to talk about on that key,
Well,
but
that's so interesting that it's a place without fear.
almost without fear.
Almost without fear.
There's extremely, like, it's almost as subtle as you could get, extremely subtle.
Maybe we could all try that tomorrow. It's like spend and then see if you can spend one whole day. If you mess up, start the next day without fear. I've been using a watch, like a sports watch, and every time I worry, I hit it and I count, and I get like 6 a day. And like worry
Wow.
is fear, so it's the same thing. But that will be an interesting exercise for us to know that we're okay, that we know that everything's perfect, that everything's fine, that we're doing great, that there's not
no worries, impossible for me.
Well,
It's-
that's
in a
so,
day.
so you could do it with
I
a
was about to say.
you could, well, you could do it with a
It's totally natural.
you could do it with a bracelet too. Like every time you worry, put it a rubber band, put it on the other side, because it's about training our brain. Like, no, like why are you worrying about something that didn't happen? Or why are you worrying about something that did happen? Like, I'm always worrying about stuff that hasn't even happened yet. Am I going to be late? Am I going to get it done? Like, it's like, that hasn't even happened. What do you like? I'm like reverse manifesting my life. And today there's gonna be a lot of fear. We're going through extreme change. So we're being influenced by the field of everyone and ourselves and this uncertainty. But what if, like, I mean, maybe we should try that as a group tomorrow. Like, wake up.
I have a better.
You're saying it's not possible?
No, I have a better idea. Because you can't be without fear. You would straight dematerialize off the
What?
physical plane if you were without fear, like in your internal environment. Like, good Lord, even ancient like gurus, like, you can't be here without choosing to be of a dense reality. Like, if you had no fear whatsoever inside of you, you could not be here. It's not possible.
But you know, the type of fear, type of fear worrying. I mean, 22 million users for fire in the grid. Yeah, I worry all day and night trying to ponder how to do it and what's going to happen. It's not possible. But doing astral travel, out of body and stuff, and other things, there's worry, fear about losing self, being injured, being whatever.
Yeah,
that I don't have anymore, really.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
I think the best
most of the time.
If you guys really wanted to do a fun, I think
experiment.
it's fun, but maybe not your average person. Santa Tana and
I know
literally
he has
30 seconds.
I know we have to.
I just want to say this so that people can try this. Instead of trying to be without worry, and every time you have worry, you're just like, no, and like become aware that every time that you have a worry, that is actually a part of your own consciousness that is saying something to you because it is having a fearful experience. So instead of being like, no, I'm not going to choose to be this way, like you're taunting a child, like you're literally telling yourself whenever you do that,
shame.
you're shaming, you're literally shaming. If you look into like
but
how trauma,
it's retraining, but okay.
Right. But there's a better, what if there's a quicker way to do that? The quicker way to do that is to be like, okay, there's literally an aspect of me, of my consciousness as this human right now that is worried about this experience. I'm going to talk to it instead because it's literally me.
Right.
Like, you see what I mean? Like, would
be
you rather
a loving best friend to you and be like,
because well,
it's okay.
Think about this as in your external environment. If you're worried about, so on a source level, we're all the same, right? And you couldn't be in my reality if there wasn't something that you were marrying and I was married to you. It's not possible. We could not sit in this room. We are a vibrational match somehow, on some way, shape, or form. Okay. that's like you having a fear and me being like, get out of here. Do you see what I mean?
So it's
That doesn't,
unacceptable.
I'm making your presence unacceptable. And the parts of your consciousness that are having worries like that are split, are no different. They just don't have a physical body, but they're inside of you because they're a part of your consciousness and your vessel. So instead of like being the commander, and bulldozing all your parts that are you, and there's a lot of them, I understand, but like, walk yourself through it, because that's self-loving, and that's what's actually going to make the biggest change is love. Honestly, like if you want, I mean, it's great. Like if you're on death's doorstep and you're at a Dr. Joe Dispenza, like Dr. Joe does a lot of that stuff, that's great if you're about to die, because like, you're right. You need something and you're about to die of MS or something, or like some disease, then yeah, like try bulldozing your way through it, so you can survive if you want to be here on the physical plane. But if that's not where you're at, like try applying a little more love, because you are literally talking to yourself every time that you're addressing a worry or a concern or anything that's coming up in your internal environment. That's exactly what's happening.
Wow. And you had said that by the time you're 30 years old, you've had how many trauma splits? Like the average person?
18.
So by the time you're 18, how many splits have you had?
So I've heard that it's about 120, and that's if you have really good parents. You've had 119 different occasions from the age of 0 to 18 where you've had a traumatic instance in your childhood. And that's if you have really good parents who have plenty of energy to raise you and stayed together and love each other and did a really good raising.
Wow.
So, but don't be daunted, because like having more parts actually does give you more energy when you integrate them. So there is a balance.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. And well, Santa Tana.
Yeah, you have the last word, Babaji. We just have, go for it. We just have a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. My problem was I didn't think I was going to be able to unmute, but I guess I succeeded.
Yeah.
Susan made a comment about fear, and she's right. The media keeps us all in fear, because as long as we're afraid, we can't think. And they don't want us thinking, because we're liable to think ourselves out of the mess we've made. Any comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the thing that I really want to ask is, why are you paying attention to that?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that's a good one. I don't pay any attention to it either. And the way I haven't had fear. How long has it been? I can't remember how long it's been since I had fear. I don't believe in it. I think if you have faith, there's no time for it. So when things aren't right, you just go on with it anyways. You just know that everything's fine. Somebody's got your back. I mean, that's what God's all about, right? And now the other thing I wanted to bring up was this thing about the castle. I was told to build a palace. They told me where to put it, and they told me how to build it and what they want it to look like. And it's supposed to be some sort of, I guess, a universal place where all faiths are acceptable. Not this guy or that guy, but everybody will be welcome. And it's called the Temple of Peace, Love, and Understanding. So I would like to visit you in your castle. And when I get mine built, you'll be certainly welcome in mine.
I do appreciate that. And you should build it if that's what they said. If that's what you love. If you don't love, you don't want to.
No, it's all about money. You can't do anything without money. So you wait for someone that's got the money that has the same idea, and then you give them ideas, they give you cash, and you put it together. So it's just a matter of time. But hey, thanks for the time, Zenka. You better get on without me.
One more thing I want to add, because I realize what I said might have been interpreted not the best way. What I meant by is, why are you paying attention to that? What I think what I would like to say instead is, what is it that you can really do about that?
Well, you could go to GoFundMe if you're talking about money.
I'm sorry.
He's talking about the news
I'm
and
talking
how
about the news.
Oh, the news. Oh, yeah. You just got to realize that they're the enemy, and they're going to poison you. They're going to give you lies. Everything they've ever told you is a lie. Who brought down the Twin Towers? They didn't tell you who did it, right? And I won't tell you either, not right now, who killed John Kennedy. They're not telling the truth. You know, what did they say about David Koresh? I mean, it's all bullshit, and it's all done by the demons. You know, in Sanskrit we call them asuras. So the asuras control the community, and the first thing they do is they grab up the radio and the television, and they've got the internet now. Everything you're exposed to is lies. You just have to learn not to listen.
Sure. I would also say that as long as you are, or can I offer you a loving perspective, or was now not a good time?
No, I'm sure that anything you say is going to be because you're kind and loving and generous and sweet, and you know you don't want any enemies, and neither do I. So go right ahead, tell me.
You know, I personally don't have any enemies. And I don't mean that like as in what's the human word? Like for putting myself on a pedestal. I mean like, you know, as soon as I make someone an enemy, I'm creating on a universal level, I'm creating separation from them when we are actually all one people at the end of the day. And we all are love. So I think it's important to know the difference between somebody who's doing something you don't prefer and what an enemy is. I would highly recommend everybody not have enemies, but just have preferences against what other parts of source are doing that are, at the end of the day, traumatized beings.
Yeah, hurt people.
Yeah. So.
Well, it's simple. You mentioned the law of attraction. We always get what we need. Once you get your own act together, you won't have to worry about the other guys, you know? They'll be repelled by your aura. So I don't have fear. I could walk into a place that's really scary and I go, well, you know, I'm not really all that comfortable, but so I better leave. You know, I don't push the buttons. Yeah. So we can always we don't have to have fear. That's something that we decide, and I don't recommend it.
No, I agree. You know, my dream is to walk up to whoever what we perceive as the deepest, darkest world leader and just show them love at the end of the day. That's honestly, if there was a way that I could get there and to meet the person or persons and just spread love with them, I think that would be the most impactful thing anybody could ever do, honestly. So
I think you already have.
Thank you for being with us.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you for the love, both of you.
Thanks all you guys for the love, and thanks for showing up in this world and bringing your best selves and bringing your courageous selves and yeah, so tomorrow we get to be loving with ourselves. Whatever comes up, we get to be our own best friends.
Yes.
Treat ourselves like we would treat, you know, someone who came into our house. So we love you guys, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, and thanks for being here tonight.
And Namade. Love you guys. Be well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting us come.